I am Amber, 28 years old, and my sister's husband just tried to break my jaw because the soup was cold. Before I tell you about the night I sent a millionaire to the emergency room, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The crystal tumbler hit the wall just inches from my head. It shattered with a sound like a gunshot, sending shards of expensive glass raining down onto the pristine, cream-colored carpet. The smell of scotch instantly filled the room, sharp and burning, mixing with the scent of my own adrenaline. "Are you deaf, Claire?" Brandon screamed. His face, usually so composed for his real estate billboards and charity galas, was twisted into a mask of ugly, red rage. "I asked you a simple question." I stood by the dining table, my hands gripping the back of a chair. My knuckles were white. Not from fear. Never from fear. They were white because I was squeezing the wood so hard I thought it might snap. I had to remind myself to breathe. I had to remind myself of the role. Shoulders down, I told myself. Eyes to the floor. Tremble. You are Claire. You are scared. You are weak. I forced a shallow, ragged breath, mimicking the panic attacks my twin sister had described to me. I'm sorry, Brandon, I whispered, my voice pitching up an octave to match hers. I didn't mean to upset you. I can heat it up. It's too late for that. He stormed across the room, his heavy footsteps thudding against the hardwood floor. He was a big man. 6'2", broad shoulders from the country club gym, fueled by entitlement and 3 glasses of whiskey. He stopped right in front of me. I could feel the heat radiating off him. I could smell the alcohol and the expensive cologne that failed to mask the rot inside him. "You're useless," he spat, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low growl that usually signaled the beginning of the end for my sister. My mother was right. "You're nothing but a drain on my resources. A pathetic, barren little leech." Every muscle in my body coiled tight. My training, years of Krav Maga, years of kickboxing, years of sweating in my gym until I couldn't stand, screamed at me to react. Target the throat. Sweep the leg. Solar plexus. The solutions flashed through my mind like a slideshow. But I couldn't. Not yet. The camera hidden in the button of my blouse was recording, but I needed more. I needed him to commit. I needed the assault to be undeniable. "Please," I whimpered, stepping back. "I'll do better. I promise." "You always promise," he sneered. He took a step forward, invading my space, using his height to loom over me. This was his favorite game. The intimidation. The dominance. He wanted to see me cower. He wanted to see the light go out in my eyes. He reached out and grabbed my chin, his fingers digging into my cheeks hard enough to bruise. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I let him pull my face up. I looked into his eyes. They were cold, empty, dead things. He didn't see a wife. He didn't see a partner. He saw property. He saw a dog that needed to be kicked. And then, he saw something else. For a fraction of a second, confusion flickered in his gaze. Because I wasn't crying. There were no tears welling up in my eyes. My breathing hadn't hitched. "What?" he started. But the rage took over again. He pulled his hand back, palm open, fingers rigid. The classic backhand. The move of a coward who wants to hurt but doesn't want to damage his knuckles. "Maybe this will teach you to listen," he roared. His hand came swinging toward my face. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the gold Rolex on his wrist glinting under the chandelier light. I saw the tension in his shoulder. I saw the trajectory of the blow. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was the strike of a man who has never been hit back in his entire pampered life. He expected flesh. He expected the sickening sound of impact. He expected me to crumble to the floor, sobbing, begging for forgiveness for a crime I didn't commit. He didn't expect the wall. My left hand shot up. It wasn't a desperate flail, it was a calculated block. My forearm connected with his wrist, stopping his strike dead in the air with a dull thud of bone on bone. The silence that followed was louder than the shattering glass. Brandon froze. His arm was suspended in midair, caught in my grip. He tried to pull back, but my fingers had clamped around his wrist like a vice. My grip strength was something I prided myself on, it was forged from years of deadlifts and pull-ups. He looked at his arm, then at me. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The confusion was back, and this time, it was laced with the first drop of fear. I slowly lowered my head, then lifted my gaze again. But the mask was gone. Claire was gone. The trembling housewife had evaporated. I stepped into his space. I didn't look down. I looked him dead in the eye, and I let the fire I had been suppressing for days finally burn through. "You think your wife is weak," I said, my voice dropping to my natural register, lower, raspier, dangerous. He tried to yank his arm away again, panic setting in. "Let go of me." "What the hell is?" I squeezed tighter, watching him wince. I twisted his wrist slightly, locking his elbow joint. "You made a mistake, Brandon," I whispered, leaning in close enough so he could see the rage in my pupils. "You thought you were breaking her. But you were just inviting me in." He raised his other hand, a fist this time, pure instinct taking over. "You crazy B***tch. I didn't flinch. I smiled. A cold, terrifying smile that I knew looked exactly like my sister's face, but felt like a demon's. "Wrong sister," I said. And then, I showed him exactly what happens when you try to punch a storm. Let me take you back. We need to rewind 1 week to understand why I was standing in that soulless mansion, holding a grown man's wrist and preparing to dismantle him. It was Tuesday. 2:14 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I had just finished closing out the books for my gym, Iron Core. I was sitting on my worn-out leather sofa in my apartment in downtown Chicago, nursing a protein shake and trying to ignore the ache in my lower back. The city was quiet outside, just the distant hum of traffic on the interstate. I was tired. The kind of tired that settles in your bones. But I was happy. I was independent. I had built my business from the ground up. I didn't need anyone's money, and I certainly didn't need a man to validate my existence. Then came the knock. 3 sharp, rapid raps. Then a pause. Then 3 more. It wasn't a delivery. It wasn't a neighbor complaining about noise. It was a frantic, desperate rhythm. I set my shake down and walked to the door, checking the peephole. My hallway light was flickering, casting long, jumping shadows, but I could make out a figure huddled against the frame. Small. Blonde. Wearing a trench coat that looked too big for her. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open. "Can I help?" The words died in my throat. Claire stood there. My twin. My identical mirror image. But it was like looking at a reflection in a shattered mirror. She was soaking wet, though it wasn't raining. Her expensive coat was stained with mud. But that wasn't what stopped my heart. It was her face. Her left eye was swollen shut, the skin around it a horrific shade of purple and black that looked almost artificial under the hallway lights. Her bottom lip was split down the middle, crusted with dried blood. There was a cut above her eyebrow that was still oozing. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "Amber," she croaked. Her voice was broken. "Amber, please." My instinct kicked in. Not the fighter instinct, but the sister instinct. The one that had been there since we shared a womb. "Oh my God. Claire." I pulled her inside and slammed the door, locking all 3 locks immediately. As soon as the door clicked shut, her legs gave out. She collapsed into my arms, a dead weight of sobbing, trembling exhaustion. I dragged her to the sofa. She flinched when I touched her arm. She actually flinched. My sister, who used to tackle me into piles of leaves when we were kids, who used to braid my hair and tell me ghost stories, was reacting to my touch like I was a hot iron. "I've got you," I whispered, my hands hovering, terrified to hurt her more. "I've got you. You're safe." I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a bag of frozen peas and a clean towel. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the ice. Rage was starting to bubble up in my chest, hot and acidic. I knew who did this. I didn't need to ask. I had known for 2 years that something was wrong, ever since she stopped coming to Sunday brunches, ever since her texts became short and robotic. But I never imagined this. When I got back to the couch, she had taken off the coat. I dropped the towel. She was wearing a silk pajama top. One of the sleeves was torn. And on her upper arms, clearly visible in the harsh light of my living room, were finger marks. Dark, distinct bruises in the shape of hands. Someone had grabbed her. Someone had shaken her. And around her neck, a faint, red line. I fell to my knees beside her. "Claire. Look at me." She opened her good eye. It was filled with a terror so deep it looked like madness. "Don't call the police," she whispered, grabbing my wrist with shocking strength. "Amber, promise me. Don't call them." "Are you insane?" I hissed, gently pressing the frozen piece to her eye. "Look at you. He almost killed you, Claire. We are calling 911 right now." "No." She tried to sit up, panic seizing her. "He knows the chief. He knows everyone. If the police come, he'll know I ran. He said if I ever left, he'd find me. He said he'd finish it." "He's not finding anyone," I said, my voice hardening. "You're with me now." "You don't understand," she sobbed, rocking back and forth. "He has cameras. He tracks my phone. Oh God, my phone." She started patting her pockets frantically. "I left it in the car. I threw it in the car at the gas station 3 miles away. Did I turn it off? Did I?" "Claire, breathe. Stop." I grabbed her shoulders firmly. "You are safe. Nobody is coming through that door. I promise you." I spent the next hour cleaning her wounds. I used antiseptic on the cut above her eye, wincing every time she hissed in pain. I got her a glass of water with a straw because her lip was too swollen to drink normally. Seeing your own face beaten like that, it does something to you. It's a violation on a primal level. It was like looking at my own corpse. Every bruise on her skin felt like it was burning on mine. "Tell me," I said quietly, once she had calmed down enough to sip the water. "Tell me everything." She stared at the blank TV screen. "It started with the clothes," she whispered. "He didn't like my dresses. Too revealing. Then it was the food. Too salty. Too bland. Then it was me. I was too loud. I was too stupid." She took a shaky breath. "Tonight, he came home angry. He lost money on a deal. I don't know which one. He asked me to sign some papers. I asked what they were. I just wanted to read them, Amber. That's all." Tears leaked from her swollen eye. He grabbed my hair. He slammed my head against the counter. He told me I didn't need to read, I just needed to obey. He said. She choked on a sob. He said if I didn't sign over the trust fund access by Friday, he would have me committed. He has a doctor. A friend of his. They were going to say I was unstable. Suicidal. My blood ran cold. The trust fund. Our grandmother had left us both a significant amount of money, but it was locked in a trust until we turned 30, unless there was a medical emergency or incapacitation. He wants the money, I realized aloud. The gambling? Investments, she corrected, echoing his lies. Bad investments. He owes people, Amber. Scary people. He needs my trust fund to cover his debts. If he puts me in a facility, he gets power of attorney. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw the utter hopelessness in her soul. He's going to lock me away, Amber. And nobody will believe me. Everyone thinks he's the perfect husband. The philanthropist. The golden boy. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city streets. My fists were clenched so tight my nails were digging into my palms. The law wouldn't help us fast enough. If we called the cops, Brandon would lawyer up. He'd spin a story about Claire being hysterical, off her meds, self-harming. He had the money and the connections to drag this out for years, while he drained her accounts and destroyed her reputation. Claire was broken. She couldn't face him in court. She couldn't even look him in the eye. But I wasn't broken. I turned back to look at my sister. The resemblance was still there, under the bruises. We had the same jawline. The same nose. The same height. I walked over to the mirror in the hallway. I pulled my hair up. My hair was long, down to my waist. Claire had cut hers into a chic, shoulder-length bob a year ago, at Brandon's request, of course. I looked at my reflection. Then I looked at Claire. A crazy, dangerous idea began to form in the back of my mind. It was reckless. It was illegal. It was possibly suicidal. Claire, I said, my voice steady. Where is he now? He thinks I'm in the guest room, she whispered. I climbed out the window. He won't check until morning. He usually passes out after a night like this. So we have time, I murmured. Time for what? To run? Claire asked, hope fragile in her voice. No, I said, turning to face her. You're going to run. You're going to go to Aunt Sarah's cabin in Wisconsin. You're going to turn off your phone, buy a burner, and disappear for a week. And you? She asked, confusion clouding her face. What are you going to do? I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a pair of scissors. I held them up, catching the light. I'm going to get a haircut, I said. And then, I'm going home to your husband. The morning sun hit my apartment living room, exposing the grim reality of the night before. Claire was asleep on the couch, twitching in her dreams. In the daylight, her bruises were a kaleidoscope of violence, deep purples, sickly yellows, angry reds. I sat at my kitchen island, a notepad in front of me, a steaming cup of black coffee in my hand. I hadn't slept. Not a wink. My mind was a tactical war room, mapping out the terrain of a battlefield I was about to step onto. Claire woke up around 9 a.m. with a gasp, sitting bolt upright. When she saw me, her shoulders sagged, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. Coffee? I offered. She nodded, wrapping herself in the blanket like it was armor. She limped to the counter. Seeing her walk like that, hunched over, favoring her left side, ignited a fresh wave of fury in my gut. We need to talk details, I said, sliding a mug toward her. If I'm going to do this, I need to know everything. Not just the abuse. I need to know him. His routine. His passwords. The layout of the house. Where he keeps the safe. Claire stared into her coffee. You can't do this, Amber. He's smart. He notices everything. If he finds out. He won't, I cut her off. He doesn't look at you, Claire. He looks through you. To him, you're an object. Does a man notice if his toaster changes its mood? No. As long as I play the part, he won't see me. He's desperate, Claire whispered. It's not just the money. It's his ego. He leveraged the house, the cars, everything on a development deal in the city that went bust last month. He's been hiding the letters from the bank. If he doesn't get a cash injection by the end of the month, he loses it all. The reputation he built, it's all smoke and mirrors now. So the trust fund is his bailout, I said, writing this down. Yes. There's almost $2 million in there now. He's tried to get me to sign withdrawal forms, pretending it's for diversifying our portfolio. When I refused, he started, the accidents. Accidents? He shoved me down the stairs 2 months ago, she said, her voice trembling. Told the ER doctor I tripped over the rug. He stood right there holding my hand, playing the worried husband. The doctor patted his shoulder and told me to be more careful. I snapped the pencil in my hand. 2 pieces of yellow wood clattered onto the counter. He's gaslighting everyone, I said. The doctors, his family, even you. He records things, Claire added suddenly, her eyes widening. In his office. He has a voice recorder. He tries to get me to sound crazy. He'll start an argument, then turn on the recorder and switch his voice to calm and reasonable while I'm screaming or crying. He's building a file, Amber. A file to prove I'm mentally incompetent. That's his ace, I mused. The competency hearing. If he proves you're unfit, he becomes your guardian. He gets the money legally. And I get locked away, Claire finished, a tear sliding down her bruised cheek. He told me he'd find a nice facility. Somewhere quiet. Where I couldn't embarrass him. I stood up and walked around the counter, hugging her gently. She felt so fragile, like a bird with hollow bones. He's not going to win, Claire. We're going to use his own arrogance against him. How? I'm going in there to get that file, I said. I need those recordings. I need the financial documents showing his debts. And I need him to admit what he's doing on tape. Once we have that, we bypass the local cops. We go to the state attorney. We go to the press. We bury him. Claire looked at me, and for the first time, a tiny spark of hope flickered in her dull eyes. You sound so sure. I am sure, I lied. I was terrified. But she didn't need to know that. Okay, she said. But you need to know the rules. The house rules. I flipped to a fresh page. Tell me. Dinner is at 6:30 sharp. Not 6:29. Not 6:31. The table must be set with the blue napkins on weekdays, white on weekends. No shoes in the hallway. My purse goes on the hook by the mudroom door, never on the counter. If he calls my name, I have to answer within 3 seconds. If I'm in the bathroom, I have to unlock the door. I wrote furiously. The list went on and on. It was a manifesto of control. A psychological cage designed to keep her constantly anxious, constantly second-guessing herself. What about intimacy? I asked, dreading the answer. Claire flinched. He sleeps in the master bedroom. I've been sleeping in the guest room for a month. He says I toss and turn too much and it ruins his rest. He hasn't touched me in that way since the money troubles got bad. He's too stressed, too angry at me. Good, I exhaled. That was the one variable I didn't know how I would handle. If he tried to touch me, well, the plan would end early with him in a coma. But Amber, Claire grabbed my hand. The most important rule. The one you can't break. What is it? Never look him in the eye when he's angry. It challenges him. It makes him worse. You have to look down. You have to be small. I looked at the notes. I looked at the broken woman in front of me. I can act small, I promised. For a little while. I picked up the phone and dialed Jack. Jack was an old flame from high school who now ran a private investigation firm. He was discreet, expensive, and hated bullies almost as much as I did. Jack, I said when he picked up. I need a favor. A big one. I need a listening device. Something undetectable. And I need a crash course on cracking a digital safe. Amber? Jack's voice was groggy. It's Saturday morning. Are you in trouble? Not me, I said, looking at Claire. But someone is about to be. The transformation began at noon. We stood in front of the bathroom mirror. I had my grandmother's sewing scissors in my hand. My hair, my pride and joy, flowed down to my waist in thick, chestnut waves. It was the one thing that had always distinguished me from Claire. She was the chic, polished suburbanite. I was the wild, athletic one. "Are you sure?" Claire asked from the doorway, holding an ice pack to her cheek. "It grows back," I said. My voice was steady, but my stomach did a little flip. I gathered the hair into a ponytail holder at the base of my neck. I took a deep breath. Snip. The sound of the blades cutting through the thick lock was sickeningly loud. A heavy rope of hair fell into the sink. I didn't stop. I kept cutting, hacking away years of identity until my hair sat just above my shoulders. Claire stepped in then. "Let me fix it. You look like you got attacked by a lawnmower." She picked up the finer scissors and a comb. For the next 30 minutes, she worked in silence, trimming, layering, shaping. It was a strange, intimate moment. The victim grooming the avenger. As she worked, I saw her focus shift. She wasn't just a victim anymore, she was part of the plan. She was coaching me. When she finished, I looked in the mirror. I gasped. It was her. I was her. The reflection staring back wasn't Amber the fighter. It was Claire. The bob framed my face, softening my jawline. "Now the makeup," Claire said. "You have too much color. You look healthy. Brandon likes me pale. He thinks it makes me look delicate." She applied foundation a shade lighter than my skin tone. She showed me how to contour my face to look slightly more gaunt, less nourished. "And the clothes," she said, pulling a suitcase she had packed before escaping. "You need to wear this." She held up a beige cashmere cardigan and a pair of gray slacks. "The invisible wife uniform," she said bitterly. "Neutral colors. Nothing that draws attention." I put them on. The fabric was soft, expensive, and stifling. It felt like wearing a straitjacket. "Walk for me," Claire commanded. I strode across the living room, my shoulders back, my steps purposeful. "No, no, no," Claire shook her head. "You walk like you own the place. You walk like a predator. You need to walk like prey." "Like prey?" Shoulders in, she demonstrated, hunching slightly. Head tilted down just a fraction. "Take smaller steps. And don't swing your arms so much. Keep them close to your body. Like you're trying to take up as little space as possible." We practiced for 2 hours. I walked back and forth, repressing my natural athleticism, learning to shrink myself. It was exhausting. It was harder than any deadlift I had ever done. To deny your own strength, to project weakness, it was a psychological workout. "Better," Claire said finally. "But your eyes. They're still too fierce." "I can't change my eyes, Claire. You have to soften them. When you look at him, don't analyze his weak points. Don't look at his throat. Look at his chin. Or his tie. It makes you look submissive." By 4 p.m., I was ready. Or as ready as I would ever be. Jack arrived with a small black Pelican case. He whistled when he saw me. "Whoa. Talk about an evil twin switch. You look exactly like the photo you sent me." "Focus, Jack," I said. He handed me a small, black button. "This is an audio bug. High gain. Battery life is 48 hours. If you can plant this in his office, under the desk, behind a bookshelf, it will pick up everything. It streams to a cloud server I've set up." He handed me a second device, a USB drive. "And this. If you can get to his laptop. Plug it in. It runs a script in the background. Copies documents, emails, browser history. It takes about 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a long time, I said. It's the best I can do, Jack shrugged. And Amber? Be careful. If this guy is as bad as you say. He's worse, I said. I turned to Claire. She was holding her car keys. Her car was a white Audi SUV, parked 2 blocks away. You have the burner phone? I asked. Yes. I'm leaving for the cabin now. Don't stop for gas near here. Don't use your credit cards. Cash only. I know. She hugged me. She was trembling again, but this time it felt like relief. Thank you. You're saving my life, Amber. Go, I said. I'll see you in 2 days. She left. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of detachment. Now, I was alone. I picked up the keys to the Audi. I looked around my apartment one last time. My safe space. My sanctuary. I was trading it for a prison. I walked out the door, hunched my shoulders, and lowered my head. Claire Morrison was going home. The drive to the suburbs took 40 minutes. The landscape changed from the gritty gray of the city to the manicured green of the wealthy enclaves. High hedges. Wrought iron gates. Houses that looked like castles, sitting on lawns that looked like golf courses. I pulled the Audi into the driveway of 42 Oakwood Lane. The house was massive. A brick colonial with white pillars and black shutters. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And it radiated a coldness that made me shiver despite the car's heater. I checked the time. 5:15 p.m. Brandon wouldn't be home until 6 o'clock. I used the garage opener and slid into the bay next to his empty spot. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump. 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 Calm down, I told myself. You are an actress in the most important role of your life. I entered the house through the mudroom door. I immediately hung my purse on the specific hook Claire had described. Not on the bench. On the hook. The house smelled of lemon polish and stale air. It was silent. Oppressively silent. I walked into the kitchen. Granite countertops. Stainless steel appliances that looked unused. There wasn't a single personal item in sight. No mail on the counter. No photos on the fridge. It looked like a model home, devoid of life. I went to the fridge. I needed to start dinner. Chicken. Roasted vegetables. Bland. Simple. My hands moved mechanically as I chopped carrots. Chop. 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 The rhythm soothed me. At 5:58 p.m., the garage door rumbled. My stomach dropped to the floor. The panic was real now. This wasn't a rehearsal. The monster was home. I heard the car door slam. Heavy footsteps in the mudroom. The sound of keys landing in a bowl. Claire? His voice boomed through the house. It wasn't a greeting. It was a summons. In the kitchen, I called out, pitching my voice high and soft. Brandon walked in. He was wearing a navy suit, tie loosened. He looked exhausted and irritable. He carried an aura of agitation, like a storm cloud trapped in a room. He stopped in the doorway and looked at me. This was the moment. The test. I froze, holding the knife over the carrots. I turned slowly, keeping my eyes on his chest, avoiding direct contact. Welcome home. He stared at me for a long, agonizing second. His eyes narrowed. He sniffed the air. Chicken again, he grumbled, walking past me to the fridge to grab a bottle of water. I thought you liked it, I stammered. He didn't answer. He just chugged the water and slammed the bottle down. He stood close to me. Too close. I could feel his body heat. My muscles tensed, preparing for a strike. I had to force them to relax. You're wearing that sweater, he said, looking at my beige cardigan. You know I hate that color. It washes you out. I'm sorry, I said, looking at the floor. I was cold. He huffed, a sound of pure dismissal. Whatever. I'll be in the study. Dinner at 6:30. Don't burn it this time. He turned and walked away. I let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. He hadn't noticed. He hadn't seen the difference in my posture, the slight variance in my nose, the way I held the knife. He was so self-absorbed, so convinced of my insignificance, that he didn't even really look at me. I finished cooking, my mind racing. I needed to plant the bug. I served dinner at exactly 6:30. We ate in silence. The dining room was large and dimly lit. The only sound was the scraping of silverware on china. How was your day? I ventured, testing the waters. He stopped chewing and looked at me with incredulity. My day? You want to know about my day? I spent 6 hours dealing with incompetence. The zoning board is blocking the river project again. Idiots. All of them. He stabbed a piece of chicken. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Your biggest problem is deciding which laundry detergent to buy. I gripped my fork. Don't stab him. Do not stab him. I understand stress, I said softly. You understand nothing, he snapped. You live in a bubble that I pay for. A bubble that is getting very expensive to maintain, Claire. He leaned forward. Did you think about what I said? About the trust? I'm still reading the documents, I lied. His face darkened. Reading. Right. Because you're a financial expert now. He took a sip of wine. Friday, Claire. That's the deadline. If you don't sign by Friday, I'm making the call to Dr. Evans. I know, I whispered. He finished eating and stood up without clearing his plate. I have calls to make. Don't disturb me. He went into his office and slammed the door. I cleared the table, my mind working. I needed to get into that office. But he was in there. I washed the dishes, listening. After about an hour, I heard the office door open. Footsteps going up the stairs. The shower turning on in the master bath. This was it. I dried my hands and crept down the hallway. The office door was ajar. I slipped inside. It was a masculine room. Mahogany desk. Leather chairs. Bookshelves filled with legal tomes. I moved quickly to the desk. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he might hear it upstairs. I knelt down and felt under the heavy wooden lip of the desk. I stuck the black button bug there, deep in the corner where a knee wouldn't bump it. Then I saw the laptop. It was open. But the screen was locked. Password protected. Damn. I tried Claire 123. Nothing. Brandon 1. Nothing. What are you doing? The voice came from the doorway. I froze. Ice water flooded my veins. I turned around slowly. Brandon was standing there, a towel wrapped around his waist, dripping wet. His hair was slicked back. He looked suspicious. I was looking for a pen, I stuttered, my hand grabbing a ballpoint from the desktop. For the grocery list. He stared at me. He walked into the room, closing the distance between us. He was bare-chested. I could see the muscles in his arms. He was strong. There are pens in the kitchen, he said slowly. They were dry, I improvised. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come in here. He stopped inches from me. He reached out and took the pen from my hand. His fingers brushed mine. You're acting strange tonight, Claire, he murmured. Jumpy. More than usual. I'm just tired, I said, backing away toward the door. He watched me go. He didn't stop me. But as I walked up the stairs to the guest room, I could feel his eyes burning a hole in my back. He suspected something. Not that I was an imposter, but that Claire was hiding something. I went into the guest room and locked the door. I leaned against it, shaking. 1 down. 2 days to go. The next morning, the doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Brandon had already left for the office. I was in the living room, trying to find the hidden safe Claire had mentioned. I had checked behind the paintings, under the rugs, nothing. When the bell rang, I jumped. I checked the video intercom. An older woman stood there. She was dressed in a Chanel suit that cost more than my car. Her gray hair was sprayed into a helmet of perfection. Her face was pinched, as if she smelled something bad. Eleanor. Brandon's mother. I opened the door. "You're still in your robe," she said by way of greeting, sweeping past me into the foyer. "It's 10 o'clock, Claire. Sloth is a sin, you know." "Good morning, Eleanor," I said, closing the door. "I wasn't expecting you." Clearly. She looked around the spotless hallway, searching for a flaw. She ran a gloved finger along the entry table. Finding no dust, she looked disappointed. "I'm here to pick up the gala tickets Brandon left," she said, marching into the living room. "And to talk some sense into you." "Sense?" She turned on me, her eyes sharp and predatory. "Don't play dumb. Brandon told me you're being difficult about the financial restructuring." "Restructuring?" I almost laughed. "Is that what he calls extortion?" Eleanor's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" I bit my tongue. "Careful, Amber. Reel it in. I mean, I just don't understand why he needs access to my grandmother's trust," I said, lowering my voice. "It's for our future children." Eleanor let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Children? Oh, honey. Let's be realistic. You've been married 2 years. No baby. Brandon needs that capital now to secure the family legacy. If you were a supportive wife, you would have signed already. Instead, you're hoarding it like a selfish little girl." She stepped closer, her perfume, something heavy and floral, filling my nose. "You know," she hissed, "Brandon could have married anyone. The senator's daughter. The heiress from Greenwich. He chose you. A teacher. A nobody. And this is how you repay him?" My hands balled into fists at my sides. The urge to tell this woman exactly where her son could shove his legacy was overwhelming. But I needed her to leave. I'll think about it," I said. "Thinking time is over," she snapped. She reached out and grabbed my hand, pulling it toward her. "Look at this ring. It's a family heirloom. You wear it, you owe this family your loyalty." Then she stopped. She was holding my hand. She rubbed her thumb over my knuckles. My knuckles were rough. Calloused. Skinned from hitting the heavy bag at the gym 4 hours a day without gloves sometimes. Claire's hands were soft, moisturized, perfect. Mine were the hands of a fighter. Eleanor looked down at my hand. Then she looked up at my face. Her brow furrowed. "What happened to your hands?" she asked, her voice dropping. "They feel like sandpaper." Panic spiked in my chest. Think fast." "Gardening," I blurted out. I've been pulling weeds. In the back. Without gloves. It's my therapy." Eleanor stared at me. She looked at the calluses again. These weren't gardening blisters. These were impact calluses. "Gardening," she repeated, skeptical. "Yes. The roses. They have thorns." I pulled my hand away, tucking it into my robe pocket. "I should go get those tickets." I hurried to the kitchen counter where I saw an envelope earlier. I grabbed it and came back, thrusting it at her. "Here. Tell Brandon I said hello. Eleanor took the envelope slowly. She was still studying me. There was a gleam of suspicion in her eyes now. Not that I was a twin, that was too far-fetched, but that I was lying. That I was hiding a secret life. You've changed, Claire, she said coldly. There's something hard about you today. I don't like it. Maybe I'm just tired of being soft, I said, unable to help myself. Eleanor's lips pursed into a thin line. Watch your tone. Remember who put the roof over your head. If Brandon decides he's done with you, you'll be on the street with nothing but your gardening hands. She turned and walked out. As the door clicked shut, I leaned against the wall and exhaled. That was too close. I looked at my hands. I needed to be more careful. But Eleanor's visit had confirmed something crucial. The mother was in on it. She knew about the money. She knew about the pressure. This wasn't just a bad husband, it was a family conspiracy. I went back to the living room. I felt a vibration in my pocket. The burner phone I had hidden in my robe. A text from Jack. Audio is live. I picked up something interesting from the office this morning before he left. You need to hear this. I sat down on the sofa and put in an earbud. I dialed the secure number Jack had given me to access the cloud recording. There was static, then Brandon's voice. He was on the phone. Yeah, document Friday night. No, she won't be a problem. I'll have her sedated by the time you get here. Just bring the restraint jacket. Yeah. We'll drive her straight to the facility. Once she's admitted, I'll file the emergency guardianship order on Monday morning. A pause. Then a laugh. No, she has no idea. She thinks she's just signing some tax forms. Stupid bitch. I yanked the earbud out. My hand was shaking. It wasn't just a threat. It was a schedule. Friday night. Tomorrow night. He was going to drug me, put me in a straitjacket, and lock me away in a mental institution. And once I was in the system, medicated and labeled unstable, getting out would be impossible. He would strip mine the trust fund and leave Claire to rot. I looked at the clock. 11:30 a.m. on Thursday. I had 30 hours. I didn't need to just find the safe. I needed to find a weapon. Because when Friday night came, I wasn't going to be the one ending up in a straitjacket. It was Thursday afternoon, and the clock was ticking louder than my own heartbeat. I had less than 24 hours before Brandon's Friday deadline, the deadline that would see my sister strapped to a gurney and erased from society. Brandon had left for a site inspection, which meant I had a window. A small, dangerous window. I went straight to the master bedroom closet. Claire had told me there was a wall safe behind the row of bespoke Italian suits, but she didn't know the combination. She said Brandon was paranoid, changing it every few months. I pushed aside the heavy wool coats and silk ties. The safe was there, a cold, gray steel square embedded in the drywall. It was digital. 6 digits. I put in my earpiece. Jack? Are you there? Loud and clear, Jack's voice crackled in my ear. I'm parked down the street in the utility van. You have a 30-minute window before his GPS shows him turning back. What are we looking at? Standard keypad, I whispered, shining my phone's flashlight on the numbers. I tried his birthday. Nothing. I tried Claire's birthday. Nothing. Okay, look closely at the keys, Jack said. Is there wear and tear? Any buttons that look slightly more polished than the others? Oil from fingers degrades the matte finish over time. I squinted. 4, 2, 8, 0. And maybe 6? Okay, that's 5 numbers. He probably repeats one. Or uses a sequence. Try the date of his biggest deal. The one he brags about. I don't know his deals, Jack. Right. Okay. Try 0-4-2-8-8-2. That's his mother's birthday. April 28, 1982? No, she's older. Wait. 42 is the house number. 80 is, try 4-2-0-0-8-0. I punched it in. Beep. 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 A red light flashed. Error. Damn it, I hissed. One more try and it locks out for an hour. I closed my eyes. I tried to think like Brandon. Narcissistic. Obsessed with money. Obsessed with control. What number would a man like that cherish? The car, I whispered. He loves that stupid vintage Porsche more than he loves his wife. The 911 Turbo? Jack asked. Model year 1986. Try 0-9-1-1-8-6. My finger hovered over the keys. If this was wrong, the system might alert his phone. I pressed the 0. Then 9. 1. 1. 8. 6. Click. The sound of the solenoid releasing was the sweetest music I had ever heard. The heavy door swung open. I'm in, I breathed. Work fast, Amber. Copy everything. I pulled out a stack of documents. My hands were shaking, but I forced them steady. I laid the papers out on the floor of the closet and started snapping high-resolution photos with the spy app Jack had installed on the burner phone. The first folder was labeled Project Riverfront. It was a graveyard of financial stupidity. Loan documents from shady LLCs with interest rates that screamed loan shark. Foreclosure notices on commercial properties I didn't even know he owned. But then I found the darker stuff. A folder labeled CM Medical. I opened it and felt bile rise in my throat. There were forged therapy notes. Pages and pages of them, dated over the last 6 months. They described Claire as delusional, paranoid, and prone to self-harm. They detailed incidents that never happened, phantom outbursts, imaginary voices. And at the bottom of the stack, a letter. Handwritten. To whom it may concern. I can't take the pressure anymore. The voices are too loud. I just want it to stop. Tell Brandon I'm sorry. It was a suicide note. And it was a perfect forgery of Claire's handwriting. Jack, I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. He wasn't just going to commit her. He was preparing for, if she didn't cooperate, he has a suicide note ready. Jesus, Jack muttered. Secure that. That's conspiracy to commit murder. That's the nail in the coffin, Amber. I kept digging. I found the life insurance policy. $5 million. Taken out 3 months ago. The beneficiary? Brandon Morrison. The picture was complete. He was drowning in debt. He needed the trust fund. If he couldn't get the trust fund by declaring her incompetent, he was going to stage a suicide and take the insurance payout. My sister wasn't just in an abusive marriage. She was living with her executioner. Suddenly, a notification pinged in my ear. Amber. Get out. Jack's voice was urgent. His GPS just jumped. He's not at the site. He's 2 minutes away. He must have sped. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my system. I shoved the papers back into the folders. I tossed them into the safe. I slammed the door shut and spun the lock. I scrambled to put the clothes back in order. The suits. The ties. I heard the garage door rumble open downstairs. I was still in the closet. I sprinted out of the bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I made it to the hallway just as the mudroom door opened downstairs. Claire? His voice was closer than I expected. He was moving fast. I couldn't run down the stairs, he'd see me. I couldn't go into the guest room, the floorboards creaked right outside the door. I dove into the bathroom across the hall and flushed the toilet, then turned on the tap. I splashed water on my face, grabbed a towel, and unlocked the door just as he reached the top of the stairs. I stepped out, wiping my face, trying to look sleepy and disoriented. He was standing there, tie undone, his face flushed. He looked suspicious. He looked like a wolf sniffing the air for fear. "What are you doing up here?" he demanded. "I thought you were cleaning the kitchen." I felt sick, I mumbled into the towel. "Stomach cramps. I needed to lie down." He stared at me. He looked at the closed door of the master bedroom. Then back at me. "You look flushed," he said, stepping closer. "I told you, I don't feel well." He reached out and touched my forehead. His hand was clammy. "You don't have a fever." He dropped his hand and looked at my clothes. I was still wearing the beige cardigan, but a button had come undone in my haste. "Button your shirt," he sneered. "You look sloppy." I fumbled with the button, my fingers trembling. This time I didn't have to act. The adrenaline crash was making me shake for real. "Go downstairs," he commanded. "I have a business associate coming by later. I want the house perfect." "And Claire?" I paused at the top of the stairs. "Don't go into my room again. I don't like my things being touched." I nodded, keeping my eyes down. "Yes, Brandon." I walked down the stairs, feeling his gaze burning into the back of my neck. I had the evidence. It was stored in the cloud. But now I knew exactly what kind of monster was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. And I knew that Friday night wasn't just a deadline. It was a death sentence. The rest of Thursday bled into Friday with agonizing slowness. The house felt smaller, the walls closing in like the sides of a crushing box. Brandon was home all day Friday, pacing the floors, making hushed, angry phone calls in his office. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. He was unraveling. The debts were calling, literally. I could hear him shouting at creditors, his voice muffled by the heavy oak door. "I'll have the liquidity on Monday. Back off or I'll sue you for harassment." Every time he emerged from that office, he was more volatile. He was looking for a fight. He was looking for an excuse to vent his panic on the punching bag he called a wife. I spent the day cleaning. Polishing surfaces that were already gleaming. Vacuuming carpets that had no dust. It was part of the camouflage. Around 2 p.m., I was in the kitchen, brewing a fresh pot of coffee. Brandon walked in. He didn't speak. He just leaned against the counter, watching me. "You're quiet today," he said. "Just busy," I replied, keeping my back to him. "You know," he said, his voice deceptively conversational. "Mother thinks you're hiding something. She says your hands looked rough." I froze. I told her. "Gardening. We have a gardener, Claire. We pay him $3,000 a month so you don't have to touch dirt." He walked over and stood right behind me. I could smell the coffee brewing and the stale scent of his stress sweat. "Give me a cup," he ordered. I reached for a mug. I poured the steaming black liquid. My hand was steady this time. Too steady. I turned to hand it to him. He didn't take it. Instead, his hand shot out and slapped the mug. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move. The mug flew out of my hand. Scalding hot coffee splashed across the front of my cardigan and onto my bare wrist. Claire would have screamed. Claire would have dropped to the floor, crying about the pain, apologizing for the mess. But my reflexes betrayed me. In a split second, before the mug even hit the floor, I sidestepped the splash zone. I snatched a towel from the counter with my left hand and blocked the worst of the liquid from hitting my legs. It was a movement of pure athletic efficiency. Fast. Sharp. Controlled. The mug shattered on the tile. Silence. I stood there, towel in hand, breathing calmly. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't cried. I looked up. Brandon was staring at me. His eyes were wide, not with anger, but with something more dangerous, realization. You moved. He whispered. You moved like a cat. I realized my mistake instantly. I slumped my shoulders. I forced a whimper. It burns, oh God, Brandon, why did you? But he wasn't buying it. He grabbed my wrist, the one with the coffee burn developing. He pulled me close, sniffing my hair, looking into my eyes with a terrifying intensity. Who are you? He asked. The question hung in the air. I'm your wife, I whispered, channeling every ounce of fear Claire had ever felt. Please, you're hurting me. He stared at me for another long moment. Then, he shoved me backward. I stumbled, catching myself on the counter. Clean this up, he hissed. And go change. Put on the black dress. The one with the long sleeves. We have guests tonight. Guests? I asked, feigning ignorance. Dr. Evans, he said, a cruel smile touching his lips. He's coming for dinner. To assess your condition. He walked to the back door, checked the lock, and slid the deadbolt home. Then he took the key out of the lock and put it in his pocket. He turned to me. I'm locking us in. Just to make sure you don't wander off in your confused state. He walked past me, pocketing my car keys from the hook on the wall as he went. Don't try anything, Claire, he called over his shoulder. The windows have sensors. You open one, the alarm screams. And tonight? Nobody is coming to help you. I watched him go. I was trapped. No exit. No weapon. And a man coming to drug me in 4 hours. I knelt down to pick up the shards of the coffee mug. I palmed a long, jagged piece of ceramic. It was sharp as a razor. I wrapped it in a paper towel and tucked it into my bra. Nobody is coming to help me? I thought, feeling the cold edge of the ceramic against my skin. Wrong again, Brandon. Help is already here. 6:30 p.m. The witching hour. I was wearing the black dress. It was modest, high-necked, covering every bruise, every muscle. I had applied extra pale makeup, making myself look ghostly under the dining room chandelier. The doorbell rang. Brandon answered it. I heard murmurs in the hall, low male voices exchanging pleasantries that sounded like conspirators planning a coup. They walked in. Claire, darling, Brandon said, his voice dripping with fake affection. This is Dr. Evans. He's an old friend from the club. Dr. Evans wasn't a doctor. Or if he was, he had broken his Hippocratic oath a long time ago. He was a short, stocky man with oily skin and eyes that shifted around the room, assessing the value of the furniture. He carried a black leather medical bag. Mrs. Morrison, Evans nodded, not offering his hand. Brandon tells me you've been having some difficult episodes. I'm fine, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Of course you think you are, Evans said, a condescending smile plastering his face. Denial is the first symptom. Shall we eat? Dinner was a macabre theater. We sat at the long table. Brandon at the head, me on the right, Evans on the left. I had made pot roast. I cut my meat into tiny pieces, pushing them around the plate. So, Evans said, cutting into his beef. Brandon says you hear voices. What do they say? I don't hear voices, I said, looking at my plate. She told me the television talks to her. Brandon lied smoothly, pouring himself more wine. And last week, she tried to walk into traffic. Said she wanted to stop the noise. I looked up at Brandon. The ease with which he lied was chilling. He wasn't just lying, he was enjoying it. He was rewriting my sister's reality in real time. That never happened, I said firmly. Brandon sighed, looking at Evans with a look of long-suffering patience. See? She doesn't remember. Dissociative fugue state. Classic, Evans mumbled, chewing with his mouth open. We'll need a heavy sedative to transport her. Thorazine, maybe. And then a regimented stabilization period at the clinic. The clinic? I asked. Where is this clinic? Upstate, Evans said vaguely. Very private. Very secure. No phones. No visitors for the first 6 months. Total isolation is key to breaking the psychosis. 6 months. In 6 months, Brandon would have the trust fund, the insurance money, and probably a new girlfriend living in this house. Claire would be a vegetable, drooling in a corner. I'm not going, I said. Brandon stopped eating. He put his fork down. The metallic clink echoed in the silent room. Claire, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous octave. Don't make a scene. I'm not crazy, I said, gripping the edge of the table. And I'm not signing your papers. Brandon looked at Evans. He nodded. Evans wiped his mouth with a napkin and reached for his black bag. He placed it on the table. I think, Evans said, unzipping the bag, that Mrs. Morrison is becoming agitated. It might be time for that sedative now. He pulled out a syringe. It was already filled with a clear liquid. My heart began to race, pumping adrenaline into my limbs. This was it. The trap was springing. Brandon, I said, standing up. What is this? Sit down, Brandon barked. No. I backed away toward the living room. Grab her, Brandon said to Evans. Evans stood up. For a short man, he was quick. He moved toward me, the needle glinting in the light. Now, Mrs. Morrison, Evans cooed. Just a little pinch. It will make all the bad feelings go away. Stay back. I shouted. Brandon, hold her arms, Evans commanded. Brandon stood up. He unbuttoned his suit jacket. He looked massive, a wall of angry muscle. I told you to make this easy, Claire. Why do you always have to make it hard? He came at me. I backed up until my legs hit the sofa in the living room. I was cornered. You're not sending me away, I said, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with the effort of holding back the explosion. It's for your own good, Brandon said. He lunged. He grabbed my left arm. Evans lunged for my right, the needle raised. Do it now. Brandon yelled. Evans brought the needle down. And that was the moment Claire Morrison died. And Amber took the stage. This brings us back to the punch. Back to the beginning. But now you know the stakes. You know that needle wasn't medicine, it was a liquid prison. When Brandon grabbed me, he expected resistance. He expected pulling, scratching, screaming. He expected a victim. Instead, I stepped into him. As Evans brought the needle down toward my shoulder, I didn't pull away. I dropped my level, bending my knees, and drove my right elbow backward into Evans' solar plexus. Crack. It wasn't a bone breaking, but it was the sound of all the air leaving his body instantly. Evans gagged, his eyes bulging. The needle flew from his hand, arching through the air and landing in the plush carpet. He collapsed to his knees, wheezing, clutching his chest. Brandon was still holding my left arm. He looked at Evans, then at me, shock paralyzing him for a nanosecond. What the? I twisted my left wrist against his thumb, the weakest point of any grip. With a sharp rotation, I broke his hold. I stood in the center of the living room. Evans was on the floor, turning purple. Brandon was standing 5 feet away, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, pure, unadulterated rage. UB*TCH, he roared. You think you can fight me? He didn't know. He still didn't know. He thought Claire had just gotten lucky. He thought a desperate housewife had flailed and hit a lucky shot. He charged. He swung that backhand, the same one from the intro. The arrogant, sloppy swing of a man who beats people smaller than him. And just like before, I caught it. I caught his wrist in midair. The silence returned. The heavy, pressurized silence of the eye of a storm. "You think your wife is weak," I said, my voice low, steady, and completely devoid of Claire's high pitch. "Silam Lonroy. Big mistake." I squeezed his wrist until the bones ground together. "Who are you?" he gasped, trying to pull away. I stepped closer. I let the facade drop completely. My posture shifted. My shoulders broadened. My chin lifted. The predator finally shed the sheep's skin. "Wrong, sister," I said. I released his wrist and simultaneously delivered a palm heel strike to his chin. It wasn't a knockout blow. I didn't want him unconscious yet. I wanted him to feel it. Brandon stumbled back, tripping over the coffee table. He crashed onto the floor, knocking over a vase. He scrambled backward, crab walking away from me, blood trickling from his lip. "Amber," he sputtered. You're the gym rat sister. And you're the wife beater," I said, cracking my neck. "Let's see how tough you are when the victim hits back." Brandon scrambled to his feet. He was big, and he was desperate. He looked around for a weapon. His eyes landed on the fire poker by the hearth. He grabbed it. A heavy, iron rod. "I don't care who you are," he screamed, swinging the poker. "I'll kill you. I'll kill both of you." He swung the iron rod at my head. This was real. This wasn't a sparring match. One hit and I was dead. I ducked under the swing, feeling the wind of it rush over my hair. I moved inside his guard. I delivered 2 quick jabs to his ribs, kidney shots. He grunted, bending over. I grabbed the back of his head with both hands, the tie clinch, and drove my knee into his nose. Crunch. Blood exploded. Brandon dropped the poker and fell backward, clutching his face, howling. It was a guttural, ugly sound. But I wasn't done. Evans was starting to move. He was crawling toward the needle on the carpet. "Oh no you don't," I growled. I spun around and kicked Evans in the ribs. He rolled over, groaning. I stomped on his hand, pinning it to the floor. "Stay down," I commanded. Suddenly, a massive crash echoed from the front of the house. The front door splintered inward. "Police! Get on the ground!" Jack had timed it perfectly. But Brandon wasn't finished. Adrenaline and madness pushed him past the pain. He roared, blood streaming down his face, and reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, silver pistol. "No!" Jack screamed from the doorway. Time stopped. Brandon raised the gun, aiming it straight at my chest. His eyes were wild, dilated, filled with hate. "If I can't have it," he screamed. I didn't think. I reacted. I closed the distance. As his finger tightened on the trigger, I grabbed the barrel of the gun and twisted it away from me while simultaneously jamming my thumb into the hammer mechanism. Bang! The gun went off. The bullet shattered the sliding glass door behind me. Glass rained down like diamonds. I wrenched the gun from his hand and pistol whipped him across the temple. Brandon Morrison crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. He lay there, unconscious, bleeding, defeated. I stood over him, chest heaving, holding the gun. Jack ran into the room, followed by 3 uniformed officers with weapons drawn. "Drop the weapon!" "Amber, drop it!" Jack yelled. I looked at the gun in my hand. Then I looked at Brandon. I dropped the gun. It landed with a heavy thud on the carpet. "It's over," I whispered. Jack rushed over to me. "Are you hit?" "Amber. Check yourself." I looked down. There was blood on my dress. Brandon's blood. I'm fine, I said, my voice shaking now that the danger had passed. I'm okay. One of the officers was checking Brandon's pulse. He's alive. Barely. Call an ambulance. Another officer was cuffing Evans, who was weeping on the floor. Jack put a hand on my shoulder. You did it. We got it all. The audio. The video from the buttons. The assault. The attempted murder. I looked at the broken man on the floor. The man who had terrorized my sister for 2 years. The man who thought he was a god in his own home. He looked so small now. Get him out of here, I said, turning away. Get him out of my sister's house. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, police statements, and paramedics. I sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, while a medic checked my knuckles. They were bruised and swollen, but not broken. Brandon was wheeled out on a stretcher, handcuffed to the rails. His nose was bandaged, his face a ruin of purple swelling. As they loaded him into the ambulance, he groggily opened one eye. He saw me. He tried to say something, but it just came out as a gargle. He closed his eyes again. The police chief arrived. He was a tall man who clearly knew Brandon. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. "Ms. Amber?" he asked, looking at my ID. "This is a messy situation. Mr. Morrison is a prominent member of the community. Self-defense claims are." "Chief," Jack stepped in, holding up a hard drive. "Before you say another word, you should know that everything, and I mean everything, was recorded. The conspiracy to commit fraud. The forgery. The attempted kidnapping. And the assault with a deadly weapon. We also have the audio of him admitting to the prior abuse." Jack leaned in close. "And we have a copy sent to the state attorney general already. So, don't try to sweep this under the rug." The chief paled. He nodded curtly and walked away to bark orders at his men. Then, a car pulled up. A white Audi. Claire. She got out of the car. She was still bruised, but she was walking upright. She saw the police cars. She saw Brandon being taken away. She saw me sitting on the bumper of the ambulance. She ran to me. "Amber." She crashed into me, hugging me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. We both started crying. It wasn't the polite crying of relief, it was the ugly, shaking sobs of survival. "Is he?" Claire asked, pulling back to look at the ambulance. "He's gone," I said. "He's going to prison for a very, very long time. Attempted murder. Insurance fraud. Assault." Just then, another car screeched into the driveway. Eleanor. She jumped out of her Mercedes, still wearing her gala gown. She looked frantic. She ran toward the police line. "What is happening?" "That is my son." "Where are you taking him?" She saw us. Her eyes narrowed into slits. She marched over, pointing a finger at me. "You," she screeched. "You did this. You ruined everything. I'll sue you for every penny you have. I'll have you arrested for trespassing." I stood up. I handed the blanket to Claire. I walked up to Eleanor. I was taller than her. I was bloodied. I was done being polite. "Eleanor," I said calmly. "Don't you speak to me, you trash." "We found the texts," I said. Eleanor froze. "We found the texts on Brandon's phone," I lied, well, partially lied. "Jack was finding them right now. The ones where you told him to get rid of the problem. The ones where you discussed the insurance money." Eleanor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "That makes you an accessory to attempted murder," I said, stepping closer until she backed up against her Mercedes. "The police are seizing Brandon's assets. And they're going to be looking very closely at yours." An officer walked over. "Ma'am? Mrs. Eleanor Morrison?" "Yes," she squeaked. "We need you to come down to the station for questioning regarding a fraud investigation." The color drained from her face completely. The arrogance, the snobbery, it all evaporated, leaving just a scared old woman. As the officer led her away, I turned back to Claire. She was watching. And for the first time in years, she was smiling. A real smile. "Let's go home," I said. "Not this house." Home. The trial took 6 months. Brandon's lawyers tried everything. They claimed entrapment. They claimed I provoked him. They claimed insanity. But the recordings were damning. The jury listened to his voice, cold, calculating, cruel, planning to lock his wife away. They watched the video from the button camera of him swinging that iron poker. Claire testified. It was the hardest thing she ever did. She stood on the stand, voice shaking but clear, and told the world what he had done to her. She looked him in the eye, something she hadn't been able to do for 2 years, and she didn't blink. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brandon was sentenced to 20 years in a federal penitentiary. No parole for at least 15. Eleanor took a plea deal to avoid jail time for the fraud, but she lost everything. The fines and the lawsuits bankrupted her. She had to sell the estate, the Mercedes, the jewelry. Last I heard, she was living in a small apartment in Ohio, complaining to anyone who would listen about how she was framed. Dr. Evans turned state's witness against Brandon to save his own skin, but he still lost his medical license and got 5 years for malpractice and assault. Claire filed for divorce the day after the arrest. With the proof of abuse and the criminal conviction, the prenup was voided. She got the house, which she immediately sold, half of his remaining assets, and full control of her trust fund. But the best part wasn't the money. It was the moment the judge banged the gavel. I looked at Brandon one last time. He looked older. Smaller. The expensive suit hung loosely on him. He looked at me, then at Claire. There was no anger left in his eyes, only the hollow realization of a man who had bet everything on fear and lost to courage. Claire didn't look back at him. She stood up, took my hand, and walked out of the courtroom without a backward glance. It's been 8 months since that night. I'm at my gym, Iron Core. The morning sun is streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The class is full today. 20 women. All ages. All sizes. At the front of the room, leading the warm-up, is a new instructor. She has a chic bob cut. She moves with confidence, her voice projecting clearly across the mats. "Okay, ladies." Claire shouts, clapping her hands. "Chin down. Hands up. Protect your space." She demonstrates a jab-cross combination. Her form is perfect. Her eyes are focused. She isn't me. She will never be a brawler like me. She fights differently. She fights with a quiet, resilient strength. After the trial, Claire didn't want to just survive. She wanted to live. She used the money from the house sale to start a foundation for domestic abuse survivors. She funds legal aid for women who are trapped in financial abuse, just like she was. And she started training. Every day. She walked over to me after the class, wiping sweat from her forehead. She looks healthy. The bruises are a distant memory, replaced by the glow of endorphins. "Good class?" she asks, grabbing a water bottle. "You were brutal," I grin. "I think you scared Mrs. Johnson." "Good," Claire laughs. "Mrs. Johnson needs to know she can be scary." She looks at her reflection in the mirror. She touches the faint, tiny scar above her eyebrow, the only physical reminder left of that night. "You saved me, Amber," she says softly, the laughter fading. "I never thanked you enough. You took the hits for me." "I just held the door open," I say, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're the one who walked through it." We walk out of the gym together, into the bright sunlight of a Chicago afternoon. So, to everyone watching this, to every woman who feels small, who feels trapped, who feels like she has to shrink herself to fit into someone else's box. Don't. You are stronger than you think. You are more dangerous than they know. And if a monster ever comes knocking at your door, remember my sister. Remember that kindness is not weakness. And remember that sometimes, the only way to deal with a bully is to show them that they picked the wrong fight. I'm Amber. This was our story. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Stay safe. Stay strong. And always fight back.